For many users, it's a challenge to figure out how to incorporate still images and short motion clips into a production. Do we use an external still store, VTR, DDR, or something else? On the MVS 3000 and 6500 series, frame memory is a standard feature, and a very powerful one. For instance, what you see on my program monitor is a video and key clip that was imported into the frame memory system from a popular graphics package, and is now playing back as a loop. So you can see here that this is just a loop. I'm going to go over to the frame memory menu, and we'll just take a quick look. We can slug over here and see that this whole thing is playing in a loop. This is the kind of the transport control of the frame memory. But let me show you one other thing that the frame memory is really good at, and this would be to create some clip wipes. You can see here that I'm using a different frame memory clip to go between some different videos. Makes it very easy to do a nice transition between things, and it's just as easy and quick as doing a wipe. I'm going to explain how to do both of these things starting right now. So first, we need to have a tour of the frame memory system. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come up here into the still side of this. Now, this menu is very easy to navigate. What I've got on the left-hand side, just like all the other menus, is the types of things that I can do to the frame memory. I've got stills, I've got clips, I can lock some stills, I have file mode, which I can do things like move between folders and things like that. I can create folders, which I've done here. I've separated my folders into background, clips, and stills. That way I don't have everything piled up into one place and it'll take me forever to find everything. And then finally down here we have external devices, which I'm going to touch on in a couple of minutes. So let's go back to stills. So what I can do here is I can recall a still. Now this area right here is where I can choose which pair I'm going to go into. Now there are 8 channels on the frame memory, and they're normally grouped together as pair 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8. You don't have to use them as pairs. You can put 2 different videos in one thing if you want to. For instance, here when I call up 7 and 8, you can see that frame memory 7 has a looping background playing in it. You can see that because it says play. And then I have my son Zachary on the other frame memory. So it doesn't have to be a video key pair. If I wanted to load something in here, I can choose from the library. So here I'm going to go to background, clips, and stills. So in this case, I'm going to go here and I'm going to load that. I'm going to load the sunset into it. Or here's an over-the-shoulder box, pictures of the newscasters we've been using, even a logo. Or yet another shameless plug for my children back. Or I can also load an entire pair. So if I come over to frame memory 5 and 6, you can see I have a pair here. And the way you can tell that is by the file name. If you look in these bigger boxes, you can see big little, and then big little with a parenthesis S. And what the S means is it's a sub-channel, or the key channel. So I'm going to hit pair, and when I hit pair, notice what it does down in the library. I've got a bunch of pair stills, and I have a bunch of individual stills. How do you tell them apart? Well, look at this one called News TTL1. Notice how it has 2 things layered on top of each other. That means that it has a sub-channel, or usually a key channel. But look at the picture of my kids. It does not have one. That tells me that my kids is a single, and the News TTL1 is a pair. By the way, this little button down here is really cool. It's called Sub Display. If you toggle it, it lets you switch to see what the sub-channel actually looks like. So you can see on all these here, I'm toggling that I see the video, and now here's the key. When I hit pair, it takes away all of the single channels out of the library because you can't load a single in there, so why keep it in the library? So it gets rid of those boxes for you, and now I'm going to go over here and load an over-the-shoulder box. So you can see when I load it as a pair, automatically the video and key came along with it, and when I load this logo, the video and key comes, and when I load that, the video and key also comes. Now let's freeze something in the frame memory, which is a very common task. So to get video into the frame memory, we're going to use a couple of dedicated buses. Now those are going to be found along with all the aux buses and the keyers. Those are on the top row of each ME, and if we go all the way to the end, we're going to find FMS1 and FMS2. Now FMS1 is for the odd numbered, and FMS2 is for the even numbered video channels. Why 2 of them? Because I might want to capture video and key simultaneously. And you notice that the sub-channel always appears in the even numbers. In this case, we're just going to freeze one still, so I'm just going to worry about FMS1. So in FMS1, I'm going to route, how about the cooking show here? So I'm going to take XDCam 3 and put it into FMS1. Now what I can do here, I'm going to freeze this into frame memory 5, so we're going to come over here and make sure that frame memory 5 is selected. And just so you can see what I'm doing, I'm going to put frame memory 5 on program. Under still, I'm going to go to the bottom here and say freeze and store. When I hit freeze enable, it's going to put this E to E. And you can see that because now the FMS1 destination is now high tallied in red. So all I have to do is come over here and I'm going to go freeze frame. Whoops, we got a little flicker. That's what happens in interlace sometimes. So now I'm going to hit freeze field. And we'll do it till we have a little bit better looking one. There we go. Now this is only stored on the screen right now. It's not stored in the library, nothing. If I hit this button again, I'm going to lose this forever. So over here is the store button. I'm going to hit store, and a keypad's going to pop up for let me name it. So I'm going to call this cooking, and hit enter. So let's go look into the recall menu again and look in our library, and if we see here, there it is, cooking right there. So it's part of our library. Now of course it's only in RAM, we haven't stored it to disk, and I'll show you how to do that in a couple of minutes. To capture a clip, we're going to follow the same procedure. In FMS1, we're going to select some kind of video. In fact, this one I think we'll put the basketball game in this time. And we'll go into the clip menu on the left, and we're going to go into record. Now at this portion up here, you'll see the number right now of 231. That's how many frames I have available in my frame memory to record before the memory is completely exhausted. So I'm going to hit turn off pair first of all, because I have no key signal going with this. If I wanted to record something off of, say, a CG and I wanted to store it in my frame memory, I would hit pair, and then I would make sure to route the video in FMS1 and the key in FMS2. But in this case, we're just going to turn off pair. We're going to come over here, and I'm going to hit record enable. And again, we're E to E. You can tell by the high tally light, because I'm looking at frame memory 5 on air. And we're just going to hit record start. As I do that, we're going to see people going, and you can see the stills going away up here. And now I'm going to hit stop. So what's going to happen now is I've got 37 frames left in case I want to do anything else. And the clip is ready for me. I can go to recall, and I can hit this button right there and recall that clip and go to the play menu and play it right now. Even though it hasn't finished rendering all its thumbnails, I can still play this. Now see on the play menu here, we have this little timeline going. Let me cue it again and hit play. So you can see up here the time code playing, 1 hour and 2 seconds and 3 seconds and 4 seconds, etc., etc. Right there you notice at the end the thumbnail went away because it hadn't rendered it yet. Now it's finished. We can also trim this thing. So now I'm going to go to the recall menu. And instead of keeping it on frame memory 5 and 6, I'm going to go to frame memory output channel 1. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to reselect this. I'm going to load it deliberately into channel 1. Okay, so we have the beginning of the clip here. Now, I can go over to the play menu and play it from here, but I don't want to. I have another trick I can use, and that's going up to the trackball. If I go into the device menu, these two buttons are dedicated to frame memory 1 and 2 clip playback. So I'm going to hit this button, and it allows me to play, rewind, fast forward, cue. I can even shuttle, and I can jog. And see the timeline is scrubbing up here now when I jog this. So what I want to do is there's a piece of this that I don't want. I don't want this part. I want it to start right there. So I'm going to jog to this point. Now what I can do is either on the screen, see where it says start time code, I can either hit set right here, which I will, and notice that the start icon now is set to 1 hour, 3 seconds, and 7 frames. And I'm going to go to the end, right there, but I want to make it the clip end right there. So I can also hit stop time code on the screen, but there's also a button on the trackball called stop time code. So notice what it did. It's now showing me that I've got a start and a stop time code. This is all great, but I'm going to have to remember to hit Q and do some extra work to make sure it starts at that point rather than the beginning of the clip. Plus, I want my frames back. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come over here and hit the trim button. What trim is going to do is it's going to throw everything out that's before the start and after the stop. Notice what it did. I now have a clip again that's shorter, so I'm going to recall that clip and find it in here. It's only 2 seconds and 20 frames now. In addition, I now have 151 frames free, so I got my memory back. So now when I roll it, it's only going to be that 2 second and 20 frame clip, and that's it. One other small thing that I do occasionally is I go into the reposition and lock menu and I go to lock. If I'm sitting on one of these frames, I can lock it. And note that the L appears right there. That's just so that I don't accidentally blow it out. It's one extra step. It doesn't password protect it or anything like that. It's just one extra step that I have to go through to make sure I want to erase that frame. So I'm going to take that off so I don't forget it later. This is the file menu. The file menu allows me to do things like moving things between folders. For instance, Underneath stills, notice that my clip got put under stills. Well, I don't want it under there. I want it under clips. So notice the arrow goes from the top to the bottom. So I'm going to select clip 1 here. I'm going to go down and put clips on the bottom, and I'm going to say move. So what it's doing now is it's now moved that from the stills folder, which didn't make any sense, into the clips folder. I can go to the delete, and I can delete something that I don't want. And lastly, I can go to the rename, which is going to be pretty important because C0001 doesn't mean a whole lot to me. So inside my clips folder, there's C001. I'm going to rename that and call that BSKT for basketball. It's going to redo it, and now it's called BSKT. I'm going to show you one other thing in the file menu, but I need to make a mistake first to show you how it works. I'm going to go back up to the still really quick. Let's go freeze another one. I'm going to accidentally keep myself in pair mode. I'm going to turn freeze enable on, and I'm going to hit a field. Let's find a better freeze there. And I'm going to hit store, and we're just going to leave it the default of image 001. Okay, we're going to store it. Uh-oh, I made a mistake. I accidentally stored a pair, so it's got a sub-channel with nothing in it. I want to get my frame back. A really easy way to do that is to go back to the File menu. On the left side, select Pair Recombination. And what this does is it does two different things. I can either do what's called coupling or separating. In this case, I want to separate the accidental pair that I made by not turning off the pair button into two singles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the separate button, and it's going to warn me, are you sure you want to separate the pair? Yes. Now look what it did. Instead of the subclip as part of image 001, I now have an image 001, my original one, and I now have an image 002. Now it's easy for me to go into the delete menu, come down here, go to image 002, and delete it. So I got my one frame back. Sometimes that's important. Okay, so we've got all these clips and we've got all these stills. How do we store them somewhere? So there's several different ways that I can store some of these clips out of the switcher. The first one is going to be through the normal File menu. To get there, we're going to go to the top menu and we're going to hit File. And we can go over here and see frame memory on the left. Now, remember before when we were saving stuff, we talked about we had the left side and the right side with the arrows that said save and load. Well, we're doing the same thing with this. So register is on the left, meaning what's in the frame memory currently. And we have the default directory, a background directory, and there's my stills directory. Then on the local disk, which is a solid state drive inside the switcher itself, I have different folders. So I'm going to put it into the test directory. And there's only a default directory, and that's okay right now. I want to go and save a couple of the things that I just did. So let's go and save my daughter Kelsey right here. So we're going to hit save, and it takes just a second to save it onto the SSD drive. There's that one, and I also want to save my CG. Notice on the left here, as I scroll through here, I'm not seeing anything about key signals. That's okay, because when you save them as a pair, it gets one name. For instance, my 2 box, I know has a key signal. When I save it, it's saving both the video and the key together. The next place I can save is my external USB device. And again, to get to that, we're going to go local disk and change it to removable disk. And if I go to the directory, you can see I've got a whole bunch of stuff on my USB thumb drive. I'm going to put this under Stacy. And again, I only have one directory underneath there. And again, I'm going to go over here, and this time I'm going to save Drew, because he'll be jealous if his sister gets saved and he doesn't. So I'll save my one son there, and he gets saved. And lastly, I'm going to come down and save his brother Zach. Now, none of my kids can complain that they were not all saved. Now, what if I want to save a whole bunch or even all of the stills at the same time? To save everything to the internal SSD or to an external USB device all at the same time, I can go down to the All menu. And notice here, I can select something in a category, and outside of it all by itself is frame memory. If I hit frame memory here, go up to the internal local disk, make sure it's in test, which is good. If I hit save, it's going to start saving every single frame memory to the internal drive. I can also do the same thing with my removable disk. But there's another way that I can store stuff. Let's go back to the frame memory menu by going to the main and hitting frame memory. Down here we have external device. And you can see that I have two groups. I have external hard drive, and I have backup to and from VTR DDR. Let me go through the first one first. Now in the back of the switcher processor is a USB 2 port located right here. Now this is designed to take a small portable hard disk drive and hook it up. Now how is this any different from the internal drive or a different USB? It's designed to save everything directly to that drive without having to go through any of the switcher processor. So it's a little bit quicker. So you can see here, it'll automatically format that drive with 15 different partitions. Each one of those can hold the entire contents of the frame memory, whether it's stills or clips. So you can see here in this folder, I've got 779 files, clips or stills, that have been deposited into the second partition. If I wanted to store now, I would go to another free partition, and you can see here that restore is turned off because there's nothing in it. But backup, I can either replace, which means erase everything in there, or I can append to add to what's in it, and it's going to warn me that I'm going to write over everything in that directory, and I'm not going to do it right now. We'll just say no. But if I said yes, it would take a few minutes to back up everything in that directory. The one that I personally really like the most is backup to DDR-VTR. The reason backup to DDR-VTR is so cool is that I can back up my entire frame memory in only about 35 seconds to any device that records video. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select a frame memory, which I got one right now. I'm going to turn on what's called backup enable, which kind of arms the system. And I'm going to punch up frame memory 1 on the line here so you can see what it's going to do. So in this case, I'm going to route the output of the switcher into a VTR, anything that records video. Obviously, the least amount of compression you're going to use, the better it's going to look. I'm using an XD-Cam deck, which has beautiful 35 or 50 megabit compression. So I'm going to hit backup start. And what it's going to do is it's going to prepare to play back the entire contents of the frame memory all sequentially. What it does is starts with this red image that you see. Now it's going to tell me right now, go ahead and roll my DDR, VTR, and record. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to hit yes. And you're going to watch. What it's going to do is it's going to play back every single clip. There's a video, there's the key signal, there's the little clip we made of the basketball people. Here goes another video, here goes another key. We're about half done now. There's my loop, and there's the loop of the key signal. And we're going to do that, one more of these, one more key signal, and now it's going to play back all the stills. And now it's telling me, hang on a second, and I can go ahead and stop my VTR. Now, how does the switcher possibly know what all those stills are and what they're called and all that? Well, there's a little metadata file that it's now asking me to save. I'm going to go hit that, and I can save it anywhere I want to. So I'm going to put it under my local disk, under test, and I'm going to save it. So now, let me go back to the frame memory. So now if I want to restore from my DDR, all I have to do is queue up the device, put it into the frame memory input bus, which is FMS1, go up here, load that file, and it knows exactly what to do with it now. And as soon as I say replace, restore, it'll record it. Now that's really cool because it only takes about 30 seconds to load a completely new set of frame memories from a VTR or DDR. Now let's take a look at how we import clips and stills from the outside world. Okay, to bring something in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the File menu. And under All, External File, there is a button down on the bottom called Import Export. Now this is useful for bringing in formats that the switcher itself does not store. For instance, I can load a TIFF, a bitmap, a targa, or a ping file. Now, the TIFF, targa, and pings can have embedded alpha channels or key signals into the same file. Bitmap itself doesn't support that. Now, I personally like the ping format because built into that format is a lossless compression. So the files are going to be a little bit smaller and they're going to load just a tad faster than any other format. So I'm going to go to the ping, tell it what type of file I'm looking for, and I'm going to go find into the new directory. I'm going to load this file called Kelsey. So I'm going to say import. Now what it's telling me here is it's warning me that if the file includes a second channel or a built-in alpha channel, I'm actually going to take 2 frame memory locations rather than 1. It's only letting you know that in case you have 1 frame left, the load's going to fail. So I'm going to hit yes, and you can see it's going to load here, and it's converting it, and it's done. And if I go down here a little bit, we'll be able to find Kelsey. There it is right there. So now if I go back into the frame memory menu, you can look into here, and we see Kelsey. You can also import multiple files. So again, I'm going to go back to my File menu, Let's change the directory this time. Now what we have here is I'm going to load my 3000 logo loop. Now I don't see anything on pings. It's probably because I made it in a different format. So let's go to TIFF, and there it is. If I wanted to load all of these files, I'm going to hit the All button and then hit Import. Now I'm not going to do it because I've already got it loaded. Now keep in mind that a clip is nothing more than a whole bunch of stills played back at frame rate. So if I go back to the menu over here, you can see 000, 001, 002. All those are serial numbers of the same file name. So when they get loaded into the system, the switcher looks at it and says, oh, I see serial numbers, it must be a clip. So if I go into the frame memory menu, we can come over here to clips and look at it, and there it is. Now let's use the frame memory's clip player to make a clip transition between two video sources. There's a great little feature in the switcher called clip wipe. If we look here, this used to be the non-additive mix transition type. I don't use that very much, so I've replaced that button with a new label, but also I can go into the engineering setup menu under Panel, Config, Transition Module. And down here on this particular thing, notice that I've got mix, preset color mix, wipe, and DME. I've changed this from being non-additive mix to frame memory 1 and 2 clip. So now I've changed the function of this button to perform this. So the way this works is really cool. So I'm going to double press the frame memory 1 and 2 clip button, and it's going to come up with a brand new menu. Now this menu looks kind of complicated, but it's going to let me choose the clip that I'm going to use and what type of background transition I need. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my clip, and it goes right to the frame memory to let me select it. So in this case, I want to use this one right here, the frame memory wipe for MVS 3000, okay? Now, I still need to put it up on key 1, so I'm going to put frame memory 1 here, and I'm going to turn the key on. I'm going to go into my keyer and make sure that all the stuff's right, it's linear, it's auto-select, great. Now I'm going to call up a video, and let's call up a second video. Now watch what happens when I hit auto-trans. It actually runs the frame memory automatically for me, just as a transition, kind of like DME White did that we talked about earlier. And notice that it's already changed the frame rate of the transition to be the length of the clip. Now there's only one problem with this particular transition. It doesn't look right, does it? It's because I need to do a wipe in the background to kind of track with this. So that's really easy. What I'll do is I'm going to first figure out what kind of wipe I need. So I'm going to double press wipe here. And now I can see that this is kind of wipe. Well, that's not going to work really well. I need a vertical wipe. I don't want to soften it a bit. So I'm going to go to edge and direction. I'm going to hit softness, and I think 40% softness will work really well for me. I'm going to go back to frame memory 1 and 2 clip, and since I don't want to hunt for the menu, I'm just going to double press it again. Now if I run it, it's still doing a dissolve because we haven't told it what the background transition type is. In this case, I'm going to tell it I would like to do a wipe. Notice that it's already found the wipe that I had just set up there. Now watch what happens. There's my transition. That's what we showed a little bit earlier at the top of this section. I can preset things very quickly and wipe to them. Very nice. Now, I want to store this as a snapshot. So I'm going to come up to my multifunction module. I'm going to have snapshot and program preset. And let's store this in number 67. So I'm going to store by holding down snapshot, and I'm going to hit number 67. Now remember, a snapshot's going to remember everything about the ME. I don't want it to remember the cross points. So I'm going to hit Edit Enable to bring up my attribute editor, and I'm going to turn on cross-point hold for A and cross-point hold for B. What this is going to do is it's going to make sure that whenever I call this effect up, it's not going to change anything on the air. If I push this and hit it, it doesn't change it. If I push this, it doesn't change it. But it will call up my clip wipe. Let me do one more clip wipe here. So let's double press this again and change my clip. This time, I'm going to select wipe number 2. Now this is a completely different type. So let me go back and I'm going to say I want my background type to be a mix. Now watch this clip. Notice that it's a little bit longer at 2 seconds and 1 frame. This one comes in and does that. Well, that's all fine, except again, it's dissolving in the background and I don't want it to dissolve. Now I've got a terrific time saver. See here where it says background transition set timing. That sounds very complicated, but it's really easy. Let me show you what it does. I'm going to move my fader to the point where I want the transition to start, which is going to be right there. Sorry about the flickering, but that's interlaced for you. I'm going to hit start. Now look what it does. it chopped off and said the transition isn't even going to begin until right here. Well, this is just going to be an undercut. So what I'm going to do is move it one more frame and hit transition set timing, stop. So it's going to do the entire transition in one frame, or in layman's term, a cut. So watch what happens now when I run it. Changed it. Go here, runs it. Here, runs it. Let's store that as a snapshot. Hold down snapshot, number 68, and again, let's go to Edit Enable and turn on cross-point hold for A and for B. Let's recall 67, and here comes this particular wipe. 68 gives me this wipe. So now let's program a snapshot to recall a clip and start it playing. All right, so let's pick on our looping animation again. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go to frame memory 1 and 2. Let's go to a clip, go to our loop. And again, we can come over here and hit loop and hit play. And there it is. But I want to store this in a snapshot. Now, we talked about snapshots before where we have regions down here. We have ME1 and program preset, etc., etc. In addition to ME1 and program preset, there are 8 user regions in the switcher. Now, what's a user region? Let me show you. I'm going to go over here to Engineering Setup, Switcher Config. You can see here it says User 1 through 8 Config. You can see here, here's all my aux buses, color backgrounds. Now these are extra areas of the switcher that you might want to store in a snapshot, but the programmers on the switcher didn't feel like they wanted to lock you into storing it in a particular place, especially if you don't always save, say, things like aux buses or color background. So if we go down to the bottom, we're going to see my frame memories. So you got frame memory 1 through 8. What I have done is I have assigned the pair of frame memory 1 and 2 to be what's called user 1 region. I've personally assigned frame memory 3 and 4 to be user 2, 5 and 6 is user 3, and 7 and 8 is user 4. So now I know where to store these things in a snapshot. So let me come back up to my multifunction module, and because I called this up on frame memory 1 and 2, it's going to be user 1, as we can see here. Well, I don't see user 1 here anywhere. Well, that's okay. There's a More button. And when I hit More, the keypad shows me extra regions that wouldn't fit up here. So I'm going to select user 1. So now I'm going to store a snapshot on user 1. Let me hit exit to get back to the storing area. And I'm going to hold down snapshot and hit number 69. So now what happens is I've stored that. Now let me recall it again. Uh-oh, what happened? Well, there's one extra step that you have to do to make sure the switcher understands that you want to actually play the clip when you recall the snapshot. And that also has to do with the attribute. So what I'm going to do is, just to make sure it knows what clip I want to do, I'm going to recall the same clip again. I'm going to go into the loop on frame memory 1 and 2, and I'm going to go into play and make sure that my loop is turned on. So now I'm going to go to the snapshot menu. Now to get there, I'm going to go to my top menu button, and I'm going to hit snapshot. This is a menu we haven't been in before. Now it happened to land right on number 69 where I'm at. What I'm going to do here is I need to select this little tab up here, and this will tell me which regions I'm going to change things on. So I only want to change user 1, not ME1, so I'm just going to turn ME1 off and hit OK. And so now user 1 is by itself. And I'm going to come down here under Attribute and hit this button called Clip Event. Now I'm going to select frame memory 1, and we can see over on the right-hand side that the clip is already loaded, and its loop is its clip name, and the looping is turned on, and how long it is, etc., etc. I'm just going to hit Set. Then I'm going to go to frame memory 2, which is its key channel, and I'm going to hit Set. But we got one other thing that we got to do. I want to turn on autoplay. So I'm going to turn autoplay on number 1 and autoplay on number 2. Now, I'm going to go load something else in the frame memory so that we can trick it. I loaded something else. And as soon as we come back up to the multifunction module, I'm going to go snapshot 69, and it calls up the frame memory and immediately starts to play it. Now, in addition to all that, the frame memory system is capable of recording and playing back embedded audio on any clip that you capture into the frame memory system. Now, to enable audio, we're going to go to the Engineering Setup menu. It's kind of down deep in here a little bit. It's under System, Install Unit Config, and we have to go and select Switcher. and hit the button called Unit Config. Now these couple of things are deliberately buried because it changes the way that the system operates, and you don't want to keep changing them all the time because it requires a reboot on the switcher. Now we're going to hit the Frame Memory Ancillary button. Now Frame Memory Ancillary is just fancy word for all the embedded audio. It's going to capture everything that's not video in the SDI stream, so we call it ancillary instead of embedded. If I wanted to actually turn this on, I would hit execute. Now it's going to tell me that the system's going to reboot. In this case, I don't want to, so we'll just say no. I get clear to take it back. Let me give you an example here in the frame memory menu of what it looks like when audio is in here. So under the clip recall, we're going to go to ancillary enable. And notice here on the lens flare, it has a little A in the corner. That means that there is audio or ancillary data available for that clip. Now, if for some reason the clip had ancillary audio and I didn't want to use it, I would just turn it off by selecting the clip and turning off ancillary enable.